Those of you who have been following along with the channel know that for the past 4 years I've been working on Ribbit Rogue, a dice deck building roguelike being made for the playdate. Now, finally, after all that time, the game is out today. There'll be links in the description to both the catalog and itch pages where you can get the game. While it's nice to see this final iteration of the game, it looked a whole lot different all the way back in its first inception. So I wanted to take you through what those 4 years looked like, and what I learned along the way of making this game. All the way back in April of 2021 is where this project began. I was just getting ready to graduate college, and I had recently fallen in love with the hobby of game dev, just a year and a half or so earlier. The job search was a slow grind, so I had a good chunk of free time on my hands, and I decided to try and make a larger project, since I had only made a couple of tutorial projects and game jam games at that point. I ended up with the idea for a roguelike set in a casino, with your attacks being these different mini-games based on real casino games. At the time, I only had a basic blackjack system implemented, and if I'd only known how popular that idea could have been, maybe I would have stuck with it. But after 6 months of work, I decided to move in a different direction. I realized that especially with having all different types of casino games, I felt like I was really overscoping a bit, and just wanted to land on one singular mechanic. After getting some inspiration from Yu-Gi-Oh's Dungeon Dice Monsters, I landed on a deck builder that uses dice instead of cards. At the time, this was a much more unique concept than it currently is, seeing as dice roguelikes have become really popular in the last couple of years. There's even a super popular game called Die in the Dungeon that not only is a dice deck building roguelike, but the protagonist is a frog, which is pretty funny honestly. Now this switch was a great direction for the game, but it did come at a bad time. I had finally gotten a job after searching for forever and had just moved out. It was really difficult trying to find time to work on the game in this new routine, which I know is something that a lot of people experience when they get their first real job. Over the next few months, I feel like I was slowly but surely finding the right balance, but still, progress was pretty slow. All this time, I'd been watching a ton of different devlogs, and just really enjoyed seeing all the different projects people were working on. So, in February of 22, I decided I was going to make one of my own. It definitely was a time investment since I had no prior experience with editing, so that video took an embarrassingly long time to come together. Looking back at it, I could tell I was not very comfortable doing the voiceover, which is something I'm still working on, and there's a lot of other issues I have with the editing. But it was a big step for me. Just putting that video out and getting some great feedback gave me a lot of motivation, and for the first time in a while, I was back to full speed ahead. I did a bunch of stuff like a status system, some dice synergies, and a map generation system, but this extra motivation wouldn't last long. The more I worked on the game, the more I realized it was just unattainable. It was just way too large of a project for my current skill set, which was something I felt like I knew the whole time, but I just ignored it. By April of that same year, I decided to shut down the project for good. The next few months, I didn't do a single thing with making games. I felt like a bit of a failure after giving up on the project, but that's just part of the game dev process. Not everything you try and make is going to reach the finish line, especially in the first couple years, and that's totally okay. No matter where the process ends, there's still a lot that you can learn in the end, and the knowledge carries into your next projects and helps make them a lot better. I really didn't have any good ideas or plans for what I was going to do next, but that's when I rediscovered the playdate. There was a lot of news going around about it since the first pre-orders had finally shipped after a year-long wait. And I had actually remembered seeing it when it was first announced way back in 2019, but had totally forgotten about it since then. But after seeing it, I got really inspired to make something again. This led me down a 3-month path to making my first ever commercial release, Reflector, then followed up by another couple months on a puzzle game called Stream. At this point, it's April of 2023, a whole year since I stopped working on the original game, and I was itching to take on a big project again. I was determined not to fail this time, and I really didn't want to overscope, so I decided to make the exact same game that I failed to make before. I love that original idea, and the screen limitation of the playdate itself seemed like good bumpers to keep me in line and not take too long, especially with things like art. Along with that, This is when I really learned the importance of planning things out early. Who would have thought? On my first attempt, I was all over the place, so I decided to try and write down the basic mechanics and ideas that I wanted to implement. This doesn't mean that these were rigid guidelines by any means, because the project really grew and evolved over that time, but it just gave me a good basis to shoot for. I also decided to scrap the casino theme, since that was a bit of a holdover from the original blackjack mechanic, and instead I turned the main character into a frog, traveling through the swamp in order to root out the corruption that's overtaken it. The first hurdle I had to get over was seeing if I could even fit all the information on the screen, since I only had 400 by 240 pixels to work with. After a while, I finally got it though, and during that process it changed up how some of the mechanics worked, and simplified a lot of them into something more manageable to finish. After about a month and a half, I had this game basically in the same state as it was when I scrapped it. This really gave me some confidence that the switch to the playdate would knock down the scope enough for it to be completable, but this still was going to be a large project. At this point, everything moving forward was completely new from the original game, but progress was still going quickly. The next 5 months were packed with new features. Combat was finished with the status system and extra abilities, the new map system was in place, I had a shop, new enemies, a first boss, tons of new dice, a relic system, a main menu, a save system, a manual to help the player, and map events, just to name a couple things. While it felt like I was cranking through features and giving consistent updates about the game, after about a total of 7 months of work, I only now just had a basic demo for people to try out. The really difficult thing was that I needed so many different systems to be put together to actually try out the gameplay and see if it was fun. Unlike, say, a platformer where you can see the enjoyment of the game from just the movement and a simple test environment, or a puzzle game from a couple of levels, I basically needed every system in place and working together to even know what the game would feel like. Obviously, this is not advisable, as one of the main concepts of game dev is to fail fast and iterate, but I really didn't have a way around this, so I just had to trust my vision and hope the game was fun. Which, unfortunately, it was not.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
The feedback from the first demo brought to light a lot of issues in the overall design of certain mechanics. It was definitely frustrating to hear that some of my core mechanics and concepts were just not great, and my initial instinct was just to disagree and think that they didn't get the game. Motivation was low again, and I decided to take a break and take part in a chess engine competition that was a ton of fun to work on. I think taking some time to step away from whatever project you're working on is extremely important. Not only can it prevent burnout, but when I finally came back to the game, I got to see it again with fresh eyes. And what do you know? The testers were right. Overall, the way you gain dice and relics was not only confusing, but in the case of dice, having an ever-growing pool just didn't work with the gameplay, and it made players not want to choose rewards a lot of the time. This is when I implemented some big changes, like limiting your dice pool to only 10 dice that you swap with the new ones you get, and adding an XP and leveling system that rewards you with new relics. Immediately, I felt a big improvement in how fun the game was to play, and motivation again was sky high. Not only did I make some mechanical changes, but this is where I got into adding some extra polish like sound effects, particles, and removing copyright placeholder enemies. I enlisted the help of Super Citrus to work on some of the enemy art since it was taking me so long to get that done, and art really isn't my strong suit, and he knocked it out of the park with that. All that took around 5 months, so that lands us in April 2024 for the second and final demo for the game. I got a lot better feedback the second time around, but the game still wasn't fully there yet. There were a couple large changes left to make, like removing the enemy action cooldown and completely removing healing dice from the game, as they were just too broken. This removal of the healing really changed the balance of things, so I let you heal a little bit after each battle, and added in new dice abilities that allow you to gain a little bit of health every once in a while. This wasn't it for new abilities though, as the number of abilities, dice, and relics all almost doubled, as well as an entire second area of the game being added with a bunch of new enemies. At this point, all the content of the game was in, and playing it from start to finish I was so happy with how it turned out. All of this was done by June, so you may be wondering, why did it take almost a year for the game to come out then? Well, it's actually a bit deceiving, because the game was actually finished in November. The rest of the time was spent trying to get the game on the Playdate's official catalog and waiting for the release date I was given. But that's still 5 months of work on a game that was supposedly done. So what happened? It's a commonly known thing for game dev that the final 10% of your game takes forever, and that was also true in my case. While everything with actually playing the game was done, there are still so many things that the player takes for granted that need to be finished. I actually did a good amount of work before this over the first 3 years, but I skipped over a lot of it. First thing left on the list though was music, which I had Flowerhead put together a 6-song soundtrack that is amazing, and I'm really excited for people to hear all the songs. Then came a bunch of little quality of life changes, as well as polishing some of the placeholder art, sounds, and adding in some extra animations. These things don't necessarily impact a lot of the direct gameplay, but it's incredible how much they can add to the overall feel of the game. It's one of those things that you don't really realize how important they are until they're missing, or in my case, until they were added. Finally, it all came down to balancing, which took up a majority of the time. I found it extremely daunting at the start, as there are so many levers I have at my disposal to pull to change things, and it's kind of hard to know what to do. I had originally tried to plan it all out, but I quickly realized that it was just too difficult with so many interconnected interactions between the dice, abilities, relics, and statuses. So I just shut my brain off and I would go through, make changes, test, and repeat that exact same thing for 2 months until the game was finished. It's a hard line to walk balancing a game like this because I know that some things have the chance to be overpowered, but at the same time, a lot of the fun in roguelikes is getting that crazy god build and just destroying the run every once in a while, but as long as it doesn't happen too often, it's not a big deal. Here we are on release day though, and I'm so excited to get this out to players, but also extremely nervous at the same time. I've spent so much time working on this game, and I just hope that people have fun and enjoy it. Looking back at where the game was during the first demo and where it is now is night and day. These games are not even comparable. I would genuinely say that it's 10 times better than it used to be, and that's all because of player feedback, which is by far my biggest takeaway from this whole experience. It's always tough putting out your work in an unfinished state for people to judge, and you'll hear a lot of comments or criticisms about things that you are currently working on or you are going to add, and you just hadn't yet because it's the demo, which can always be tough and a bit frustrating. But the feedback is so important. When you work on a game for so long, it's extremely easy to go blind to all the issues and pain points that it has, and that's why those with fresh eyes, like the testers, are so important. That isn't to say every criticism or suggestion should be implemented, since you do need to keep the core vision of your game working with all the content and keep the scope in check. But it is all important to hear even if you don't like it. I learned so much from this game, and it was so much fun to work on, but getting to the end of the project like this, it can be a weight off your chest too. Definitely by the end of development, I was getting a bit exhausted with the game and just wanted to look at anything else, honestly. After November though, I set that game aside and only just came back to play it a few weeks ago. And all the exhaustion and negative feelings towards the game all went away, and I just had fun playing it. If you're at all a fan of roguelikes or deck builders, I really think you're going to like it. Again, there will be links in the description to both the catalog and itch versions of the game, so go check it out if you're interested. Now I'll have to see what I do next, but I don't think I want to be jumping into a 4-year project again. So I may look at making like a 6 to 12 month long game, as long as the scope creep stays in check. A big thank you to everyone who watched these devlogs, left comments, or helped with the testing of the game. All of that helped really keep my motivation up and actually allow me to finish the game. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you around for my next game.